Hello, and welcome to another podcast episode of the Leadership Breakdown Podcast. Today's guest is Jimi Okubanjo. Jimi is the founder of Arise Firebird Impactive, and she helps overlooked professionals find peace at work. I don't know about you, but in these crazy times that we're experiencing, right, we really need some peace at work, whether you work at home, you're working in the corporate space, peace, right? And not only that, she has an impressive corporate background. Jimi was a management consultant leading multi-million-dollar global transformations and also served as a COO overseeing over 3,500 employees. And I'll let her tell you more about her work experience. But now she's using those leadership skills to empower her clients with her Firebird framework, which we'll get into all of that today. And it's all about teaching us how to be adaptive when it comes to being resilient and how to utilize self-compassion to thrive, no matter the work environment. So, Jimi, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about adaptive resilience. So juicy.
Hi, Kylie. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm super excited to get a chance to talk to you and talk to your listeners. So a bit about myself in terms of my leadership background. So I've worked for decades in operations management and management consulting, and specializing in engineering, especially around project delivery or portfolio delivery of engineering space. I say my superpower is being able to diagnose very complex engineering portfolios so leadership can see what they need to do differently to better run those massively complicated engineering portfolios. So anywhere from a couple hundred projects running in a portfolio to a few thousand. Uh, Leadership wise, I was an operations manager at Amazon a while ago. And one of my kind of highlights there is I had a team of over 200 people at one point. I was also as a management consultant. I led multiple project teams, but also I got to work with leaders in changing how leaders behaved in order to drive to see operational results. Because the kind of consulting I was involved in was heavily into implementation. So we often tied down a significant amount of our fee to being able to deliver bottom line results to clients that they could see and then sign off. And the only way we could do that was to get managers and leaders, especially technical leaders, to change the way they worked for that to happen. And that's a big part of my superpower. And then I moved into management, senior leadership and consulting. I worked for an engineering consultancy, as you had mentioned, and some other another better known management consultancy as well. And then recently I transitioned into producing a documentary called Arise Firebird, Why Women and BIPOC Professionals Are Exiting the Career Space. And I did that really based on my own experiences as a senior leader in STEM. And that documentary provoked, in preparation and in production and in distribution of that film, that led to hundreds of conversations with women, people of color, women of color, about their own triumphs and challenges in the corporate world and why so many of us transition out of that space when we hit that 10 to 15 year mark. We have the experiences, the kids are older. It should be quote unquote smooth sailing, and we tend to opt for a different career path. But sometimes a little bit regretting, and there's often a tinge of regret for some of them who've had to make that decision. So that led me to producing, that's where the documentary journey took us. And so I was now the executive producer of that. So leading and managing both a filmmaking crew, which I'd never done before, as well as the legal side of things and the planning and the project management of that. So I got a crash course in leading a feature-length documentary. And then for the last few years, I have led the Arise Firebird Impactive. And that organization has really been about advancing conversations about adaptive resilience and conversations about the experiences of a wide variety of leaders within the corporate world. So that's a bit about my background. And adaptive resilience for me is that was birthed through the whole journey of the Arise Firebird. impacted project, because the question kept coming up. People kept saying, "You're just so resilient." And often when people would use the word resilience, it meant we don't have to help you because you can figure it out. And it almost was like a blank
Mm-hmm.
check to not support someone because, oh, you're resilient. And that word was just teach them to be resilient, teach them to just stand and just kind of take whatever's coming. And I found that I found and learned even in my own career, um, that there was a type of quote unquote resiliency that led me and led a lot of really enthusiastic leaders to crash out of their careers. And that's what we call toxic
Mm-hmm.
resiliency. That's the, I don't, whatever happens, if there's a semi truck driving right toward you, you don't get out of the way. You stand your ground, you stay where you are, you own your space, and you let that semi truck know who's boss, right? And that kind of,
Wow.
winners never quit, quitters never win mentality can lead to a lot of burnout, and worse. But I found for those who were able to stay in and really have very long careers, they tended to have more of an adaptive approach to resiliency. So resiliency meant, it did mean stepping away when the truck was coming. And stepping away could mean you've lost ground in the short term, but they know they haven't lost ground in the
Mm-hmm.
short term because they haven't got hit by a truck. They're able to make a lot more nuanced decisions about the battles in which they fight, nuanced decisions about who they allow to mentor them. Just because a senior executive says they want to be their mentor does not mean that person will be a good mentor. And they were able to manage the mentor situation differently with very different expectations of what that person could do. So what I'm hoping to do with the Arise Firebird Impacted is educate people around what adaptive resilience really is, in essence, what resilience really looks like. And often what we're told, what I grew up believing 9 out of 10 times leads to people getting overwhelmed because it doesn't answer the question that life
Mm-hmm.
isn't fair. How do you stay resilient when life isn't fair? And that's life, right? That's for everybody.
Right.
That's just life is lifing.
Right. Right. So that being said, what are some of the practical steps that, leaders can take to create fulfilling careers, especially in, like you said, these workplaces that maybe don't have the type of support system that we
Mhm.
need to grow?
Yeah, I think one of the things that leaders could do is engage in what I call holistic career planning. When we think about career planning, when I think about career planning, it's always around my 10-year goal, my 5-year goal, where I want to be, and do I want to go deep or do I want to be specialized? Do I specialize and go high? What skills, and then what
Mm,
skills do I want to pick up? Both soft skills and technical skills. So I want this kind of training. I need that kind of training. I need that type of experience. And those activities can have a lot of merit, and I'm not, and
mhm,
they have their place. But what we tend to focus on in those are what we call IQ, more technical, and even EQ.
mhm,
Yeah, so even EQ, and EQ, emotional quotient, is often around how we engage with others, right? So in a
right.
meeting, someone talks over me, I'm not going to pour my coffee on the table and start to swear. No, emotional intelligence tells me may not be the right time to challenge that behavior. But that still means about how I'm engaging with the people, and I'm paying an emotional cost inside myself that isn't
Mm,
sustainable to just keep doing that. So, but a lot of traditional career plans look at technically what you have to be able to do, and EQ wise what you have to be able to do. What's missing, and
mhm,
why it's not holistic, is we also have to top up our resiliency quotient. So, what do I have to
right.
be able to deal with as in 10 years time? I want to be able to go into an organization where people really have no respect for me. I mean, that's a crazy thing. For some people, that may be what you want to do, especially, let's say you work in mediation in a war zone. That may be something you have to be able to get emotionally able to handle. I may
Right.
want to be able to handle a career setback, a significant career setback, and not fall to pieces just within myself. Because many a times we don't fall to pieces in front of other people. We fall to pieces within
Right.
ourselves, within our family. Being able to handle being publicly called out and maintaining my own composure, because these are the things senior executives are going to have to deal with. It just, you want to be a CEO,
Right.
it comes to the territory. So the emotion, so having your resilience career plan means in 5 years I want to be able to handle being called out publicly and being able to keep my and keep on trucking. So that's kind of like your marker. What do you now need to put in place to be able to do that? That also has to go in your career plan. And it could be something as straightforward as I'm going to be in therapy every single week from now on. That could be something that goes in there. It could be hypnosis, investing in breath work every single week for the next 5 years. It may be actually, I'm going to invest in doing more mentoring. I'm going to mentor others. So I get experience being called out. I may take a leadership position in industry or not in industry. It could be I could run for a local seat in my local government. So that's a way to get experience in that space, in a safe space. But also, it's things like, I'm going to invest in relationships with my girlfriends, with my guy friends, because I'm
Mm.
going to need them in 10 years. So I'm going to make sure I
Yeah.
invest in those friendships now. I'm going to build rituals with them, whether it's a once a month virtual, card game, if it's a once a week dinner on Sunday, if it's play dates with our kids, but I'm going to invest in those relationships now for 10 years time because I'm going to need it in 10 years time. And we tend to drop that when we are under pressure and we focus on the IQ, EQ, and the RQ drops. And so we've got to also be building that and putting that into our career plan so we can see in 6 months, have I been investing time with the girls? No, I've missed every single one of the
Right.
meetups with the girls. That's going to make it hard for me to become CEO. I need the girls, right? Oh, I haven't done a mani
Right.
pedi in the last 2 months, 2 years. And I know that's going to the beauty shop is a form of mental health well-being. So I haven't been there. That's going to be a problem. And so what do I need to do to make that possible so I'm able to go to those places that are restorative to me?
Right. Right. I noticed that you use the word toxic resiliency versus adaptive resiliency. In what ways or like what tools do you have in place so that we don't show up as like this workplace has to be a combative space? Like how can we go in with a different mindset and think like, okay, how do I change my internal leadership? How do I change how I'm thinking, how my mindset, like how do I change my approach to when I walk into my workspace that I'm not coming in with, gloves on, like I have to be ready for battle. How can we change our internal self-talk to make it so that we don't have like, because I've experienced that myself, like where I used to come to work like, oh, I have to brace for battle because, like you, I am also a BIPOC, right, individual, and there were certain, advantages that weren't available to me, especially as a woman in a male-dominated workplace. And I know one of the keys for me was like I didn't have to keep showing up to work in this vibe, like it's me versus them. I I know for me a lot of the mental, like you said, the EQ for me was shifting how I viewed my employer, shifting how I viewed the other men that I was working with in the space, like how to create more cohesive environment, even though they were technically against me. Like I I learned to adapt to their personality styles and like learn different communication styles based on how, I interpreted their communication to be, and I would match that. And that worked well for me. So, what are some of those ways that, women who are um, walking into these kinds of environments, what advice would you give them to help shift the narrative that's going on so that they don't have to have that combativeness? And I know that's what led to my burnout experience.
Yeah.
Like I was going in like every day was a battle. But when I did go through my burnout experience, I realized a lot of the battle was just up here.
Mm.
Like I had to change the way that I saw the people around me, the projects, the last minute requests, and the being strong, being tough, and then being okay with just being myself. And like and not having to show up as a different person every day, because that also led to burnout,
Mm-hmm.
trying to be a different person to fit this narrative that they expected. I was like, no, how can I show up as myself? Because I was wasting so much energy, fighting against the machine, fighting against myself, trying to fit the mold.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, what are some tools that you give to your clients to help them really navigate that in the workspace?
Yeah, I will definitely share about that. And one of the biggest things I really want to build in my clients is greater self-compassion. Interestingly, when I was in the corporate world, I definitely had a very different perspective. I gave everybody the benefit of the doubt. I did not believe that gender or race was an issue for me. And I went into the
Hmm.
workplace without that viewpoint. And so when my employer told me that she could have hired a white man to do my job, I took that as constructive feedback that I could action.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so sex change or something. I took it honestly as constructive feedback. Like, this is something I can
Right.
handle. I took everything at face value. And I feel like, and so the self-compassion piece is, not everything is about me. The way in which someone else behaves has a lot less to do with me, and a lot more to do with them. And one of
Right.
the
And we don't
biggest,
know what's going on with
we
them.
don't know what's
Sometimes
going
they're
on.
coming in with their own baggage, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, people have their own baggage. People have their own interests. Every kind of
Yeah.
belief system on every kind of weird spectrum. And some of my beliefs are weird. These people all have jobs. Name the spectrum. People who believe that dogs and cats should be worshipped. Most of them have jobs. People who like
Right.
puppets, they all have day jobs too. A lot of puppet. And I say this as someone who loves puppets too, and also loves dogs and cats. That's why I give that example. So we don't know people's belief systems, but so I think the big thing is the work that your inner critic, where we think
Yeah.
someone behaves badly, it's my job to fix how they behave. And for often the women and
Mm-hmm.
men I work with are overachievers. They will go home and spin wheels to figure out how to make Gordon stop being Gordon. And you may
Right.
not be able to do that. And so with self compassion tells me that even if Gordon does not like me and has made it clear he doesn't like me, that isn't my problem. And the fear will be I could lose my career. I could lose everything because of the way Gordon treats me. But self-compassion
Right.
can tell me that, what, you're going to do the best you can, and you're going to trust yourself that you'll figure it out. That you're smart enough
Yeah.
that even if it all goes bad, you trust yourself that you will be able to figure out the next thing. Self-compassion tells us
Right.
that our worth isn't based on our job title, isn't based on the fact that the email came at 2 in the morning when everybody else got it at 6 p.m., or whether they did get it at 6 p.m., because in some cases they did, or you just thought they got it at 6 p.m. and you got it at 2 a.m. Either way, your self-worth
Right.
isn't tied to those things. The biggest concept around self-compassion I really want people to understand is that your dignity for yourself isn't based on your competency. So even if you did make the mistake, right? And even if you didn't give someone the benefit of the doubt, or you did and it blew up in your face, you are still inherently worthy because you are a human being. And so
Yeah.
so being able to tell yourself that, what, I'm okay. I made a mistake, but it's not the end of the world. I'm not a bad person, and not having to internalize those issues. And because I think being able to do that and to love yourself through it versus then talking to yourself saying, no, that's stupid. I read X, Y, and Z book and you're supposed to have smiles. And give him a thumbs up to make him feel comfortable. You didn't do that. You're a bad person. Or to ruminate,
Yeah.
to go home and really think, what is he thinking? What's Gordon thinking? What's he trying to do? How's he trying to destroy me? It's not going to, it just bottles up. It builds up that tension within us with no real release to do it. No real release. And the feedback, well, if I resign or if I'm a quitter, or if I get another job, I'm a quitter. No, if you decide after 2 years you need to move on to a different team, that isn't quitting. It is embracing a new adventure. Because sometimes
Right.
we may stick around the Gordons too long to prove a point that we don't have an issue with him. So I'm going to stay even longer to prove I can get on.
Right. It's a battle of the
Yeah, and so we lose an opportunity that
yeah.
a new chance comes up with a Gordana, and you could be part of that team, but because we're so fixated on proving I want to spend 5 years, you have nothing to prove. Just go be the
Yeah.
best version of yourself, and then trust. For me, trust God, trust yourself, trust your higher being, that you are smart enough to figure out what's the next step.
Right. Right. And I know you mentioned like when I heard you speaking about I what I felt, it brought me back to like when I was working there, and there's this term called quiet quitting that kind of got, you know, brought up the last couple of years, especially during the pandemic when we're all working from home. I was like, wow, I didn't realize I had quietly quit a long time ago, when I was in my corporate career. And like so many of my colleagues have quiet quitted. I don't know what's the the plural of that word, but
Quit it
they
quietly.
yeah, quitted quietly, like I didn't realize that there are so many people probably right now listening to this podcast thinking I am in this environment that I don't want to be in, but because I'm trying to keep up with the Gordons or I need the paycheck, whatever, I am sitting here quietly quitting at my job. So, what advice would you give to some of those people who may be feeling that right now?
The thing about quiet quitting in business, there is a concept. As someone who 2 degrees in business, I actually do love business theory. There's a concept of discretionary effort. I forget there are two
Mm,
other types, and I've forgotten the other one. But basically, there is what you so there's a part of effort where you do what you are contracted to do, and then you have employees that give discretionary effort. So my
mm,
understanding of quiet quitting is people are just doing what they're paid to do, right? They're
yeah,
not giving the discretionary effort. And as a business student, as a lover of the business topics and organizational theory, the onus has always been on employers, leaders. How do you entice people to want to give discretionary effort? And with a quiet quitting
yeah,
conversation, it seemed to go back on the person to say, you should just force yourself to give discretionary effort. I actually believe for a lot of us, we can get most of all our work done in less than the time we're allocated. And I'd
yeah,
reframe quiet quitting to being, no, you're focusing on efficiency. That's the key. If you are focusing on
mm,
being efficient and you can get your job done in less time, I'd love you to come work for me because you're not going to be burned out or fried. Um,
right,
Rather than saying, yeah, I'm just only going to do the work I was asked to do. That's really what I think most employers would really want you to do, the work you're supposed to do, because it's not sustainable to have people working 70 hours every single week for their entire careers.
yeah,
Um,
right,
so the concept on that is, but I think the bigger issue is a disengagement. People feel disengaged from their workplace, and at the same time, I don't think it's inherently a bad thing if you're coming
hmm,
in ethically and giving your employer what is expected. And honestly, I will say for the people I work with, they're overachievers anyway. So quiet quitting for
right,
them is 130%. 130% is quiet.
right,
That's just, and they're done by lunchtime Thursday. They've done 130% by lunchtime Thursday, and that's quiet quitting. But then
right,
invest in yourself, because by investing in yourself, you're investing in your employer. Many companies have online training modules, right? So go do the online
Mhm.
training modules. Your employer wants you to do them as well. You're enriching yourself and enriching the company. Mentor and support other people in your company or in industry, because that's going to grow your skills, your leadership
Right.
skills, and it's going to grow skills in your
Yeah.
employer. That's what I would say. Rather than trying to find ways, you've done 130% in less than what in less than in 3.5 days. Why? Because chances are you're already overqualified for the role you got anyway. So you've done that. You knew you could do that. You
Exactly.
knew that when you got the job. But then we're beating ourselves up, really beating ourselves up, because again, that's self-compassion. Like, I should be busy all the time. No, you're really good at what you do. I mean, how do you think all these CEOs of companies have time to be on conferences, at conferences, speaking at conferences, going to 3-day seminars on various issues, writing books, being in TED Talks, shoot, even being on television. You see them on Netflix cameoing. How do they have this time? Because they're very efficient with their time.
Yeah.
And so we punish ourselves
Mhm.
for efficiency, and we think that's quiet quitting. No, it's not. It's you are just really damn good at what you do. And you now have a choice of how you're going to fill that other 1.5 days that will be of maximum value to you, and also and by extension to your employer. And that kind of leads me to the point we had discussed about handling setbacks, because we may feel like it's
Yeah.
a setback that I'm not fully occupied with my time, I've done something wrong, or I even got brought into this job 1 or 2 levels below what I should have been brought into
Mhm.
for no reasons.
Mhm.
And I've not and so if we are able to kind of reframe that setback, or because if we can reframe it, it's not to say, no, you didn't get brought in 2 levels low, like I think of Star Wars. Those aren't the droids you're looking for. No, I didn't come in to, but what is the opportunity where you are, where you're sitting, and being able to recognize that's one, because it could be you're in a bigger company, got bigger networks. You could get, you could be more involved in industry associations. You could also, again, you've got your work done in 30 in that we have a day and a half a week extra to invest that time to the company. You can volunteer your time with the division that may need an extra 1 hour to go through a report or get involved in an investigation. So that can broaden your strengths. You're not under that pressure right now. You could use that to really grow your breadth. You could become the president of the
Mm.
National Association of, pharmacological left-handed prescription writers, and get really involved in that industry association that you may not have had if you were right on the precipice of your capacity and capability. You could write that paper.
Yeah.
You know, how many university professors I have run into who are looking for people to help them with research. You could be a published researcher, and they don't have to
Mm.
pay you because you've got that capacity. You have access to a industry perspective, not trade secrets. I'm not saying
Yeah.
use trade secrets, but you have that, but your
Right.
perspective will be more
Industry
valuable.
research.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel this, but we
I
don't think in those terms. The fight with like navigating setbacks, we also have to remember that our journey is unique, and
yeah.
it just might take longer. That's the truth. But the reality is, I think I was very obsessed about being the youngest woman or the youngest person to do this, to be the first woman or black person to. And I think getting obsessed with those wasn't helpful for me. I think the better one is, if I want to get to that senior level, I'd rather get there at 60 than and be able to be there than to get there at 42 and leave after 6 months, or burn out
Mm.
trying to get there at 42. I do think that time
Right.
is one of the things we underestimate in terms of what we're able to do long experience. And I know there's another issue around, okay, I get older, employers may not want to bring me in. Again, it comes down to, it's a very big world, and the economy, the industry is very big as well. So being able to build those
Yeah.
networks, build those relationships can go a long way as one gets older in their careers. So having that patience, having a longer view for your own career, can help us stay in the careers longer.
Yes. I mean, I talk a lot about legacy planning, you know, especially when it comes to entrepreneurship, because if we're building a company or a business, not necessarily our children are going to want to take over, but how can we build a company that has longevity in mind,
Hmm.
right? And so that it doesn't die with us. Because that's legacy in a nutshell, right?
Yeah.
Something that outlives us and our lifetime. And I'm super huge on that because, a lot of times we're focusing on the day to day to day to day, and then we forget the long-term vision, the long-term goals, and like what are we doing this for? Like, why are we here? What are we doing this for? Are we fulfilling our purpose on the planet? And that's when we get burnt out, when we're
Hmm.
feeling. I love that you said, instead of quietly quitting, you can invest that time into a passion project. Like, that's so good. Like, that's also part of that self-compassion that we can have for ourselves. It's like, okay, how do we reframe? I did this thing way too fast and I'm just gonna like twiddle my thumbs, bide my time. It's like, no, how can I invest that time? Because time is precious. We only have, everyone has the same 24 hours a day, you know and how can we invest that time into things that we love doing and fill our cups back up? Because right, when we're burnt out, it's because we're empty, we're not being poured into, we're giving, especially the overachievers who are listening to this, like giving, giving, giving. But now it's time to realize the only way you can have longevity is to keep pouring back into yourself. And self compassion is not selfish, right? Like you say, self care is not selfish. And a lot of times, as overachievers, we think that rest is a bad word because we were brought up with that mentality, like, hey, are you sitting down? If you're sitting down, that means there's still work to be done, so go find something to do, right?
Hmm.
Those triggers were taught to us when we were younger, and so we've ingrained that, and it made us better workers in the workplace. But what is it doing to our mental health? And anyway, I love everything that you've said today about, especially self-compassion, and like, you know, how do we navigate those setbacks, and the mindset shifts that we can make about quiet quitting. Like, there's so many good nuggets that we've brought to this, but I know, based on what we've talked about prior to this recording, that you have a wealth load of information for leaders around these types of topics. So, is there any place that they can get more information about what you do? Because, like, with all the experience that you have, with all the companies that you've worked with, you have so much to give to our audience.
Absolutely, Kylie. So my passion, my big mission is to help build generational wealth, and to do that by helping
Mm.
people kind of stay
Mhm.
and excel in their careers. For those who know, what was the 9 to 5ers? Like, it's not a dirty word. It's great to be a 9 to 5er, and I loved it. And so I have a free ebook called "How to Find Peace and Joy at Work, Even if Your Company Can't Change Right Now." And we have it's a
Mhm.
7-step framework on building adaptive resiliency. So if any of your viewers and listeners are interested, there should be I'm guessing, a link somewhere for them to be able to download the
Yes,
free
in
ebook.
the show notes. Yes. Oh my gosh. And then where can we find you online? Where do you hang out and play the most?
I play the most on LinkedIn, so you can find us at, just go to the LinkedIn at Arise Firebird, or just put Arise Firebird on LinkedIn. You'll find me, or Jimi Okubanjo on LinkedIn. I'm a little bit on Instagram at Arise Firebird as well. But you can also send me an email. I'm happy if you want to learn more about what we're doing. Just email info@arisefirebird.com.
Nice. Anyway, it was so great having you on the show today. I mean, wow. I really held myself back from going down some rabbit holes because I want to make sure the audience gets their time back. Because, like we said, time is one of the, I feel like it's the one of the least managed, well managed resources. We'll just put it that way. So anyway, audience, we're giving you back your time today. But if you want to go down the rabbit hole with Jeannie, you can go find her online and go grab that ebook, because I know there's some of you listening, probably driving to work or from work right now, and you want to find peace at work. And she has the tools to help you do that. So anyway, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. And I can't wait for people to grab your resource.
Thank you so much
Anyway,
for
we'll
having
talk
me.
to you again, guys. Bye. Thanks for listening to the Leadership Breakdown podcast. If you're ready to break free from the overwhelm and finally create the impact you've been working so hard for, I want you to grab the Leadership Legacy Playbook. This guide gives you the exact strategies to lead with purpose and leave your mark on the world. Don't keep putting off the legacy that you want to build. Grab the link in the show notes and start building your legacy today.